now that you know how to play Blue Moon City, we're going to take a look at it in our patented point-counterpoint review.
Because Mike and I agree about the game, I'm going to roll to see who will argue for it and who will argue against. If it's even, I'll take the pros, and if it's odd, he will. It's even.
Hallelujah, it's even. So now, Tom, you for once will get to tell us how much you love Blue Moon City. The only game you've ever loved, apparently. I, however, will explain in tremendous detail and quite convincingly why Blue Moon City should never leave your shelf.
All right, first of all...
To hit the table, that is.
First of all, this game, it defies categorization. I think the easiest way to explain it is that it's a semi-co-op game.
I did have trouble categorizing it when I was doing the tutorial. I like to give a little phrase. I didn't have one for this.
So I think that the semi-co-opness of it is shown in all the aspects of gameplay. So first of all, what I mean by semi-co-op is that you are competing against each other. There is only one winner of the game, but all the aspects of the game that play into the point winning, you need the other players at the table to earn those points. So the most basic one, you're making offerings to build city districts. The best strategy there is to start an offering and allow your opponents or your teammates to complete those districts for you. Thereby, you gain maximum amount of resources from minimal amount of investment. This is also amplified when a district is completed and the districts around it get completed. They earn rewards from the ones near them.
They start to ramp up.
Right, right. And so that is also dependent on players around you completing those city districts. You see the same kind of thing in the dragon scales. Those are worth a certain amount depending on how many people invest in them, but you need the other players to be invested in them for them to become valuable. So you do want to be the...
Otherwise, you'll never cycle the dragon scales.
Right. You do want to be the guy with the most dragon scales, but you don't want to be the only one going after dragon scales. Otherwise, it's not a valuable commodity. And then lastly, you see that kind of interplay in the obelisk scoring. So if you're the first person to enter that obelisk, it doesn't cost you very much, but if you wait and you're the last person to enter, it costs you much more. It's the same kind of interplay. If everyone is involved, it just amps up the scoring.
Yeah, I agree. There's a very delicate dance that you're kind of doing in this game with your teammates or opponents, depending on how you think about it, in order to get the points, kind of leech off them and also work with them. That's interesting. But the problem is that delicate dance so frequently ends in stalemate. What an unsatisfying evening that we've had dancing when we both just have to go home empty-handed. So with this game, you have, it has happened too many times, not that much, but at least 2 games that I can recall where we've gotten into a situation where everyone's played cautiously, everyone's played wisely, people haven't been giving out points left and right, people haven't been letting their teammates leech overly on their districts, and what happens is players can't accrue enough points to make the final offering to win the game without another player setting that up for them. In other words, you end up on the last district. Nobody has definitively enough to finish the game. The last district will give multiple players enough, but that means that no player can finish it because as soon as that player does so, the next player in line will be the first one to move on to the obelisk and make the final offering. So you have a situation where nobody can complete the game and you just have to call it. And that's really a bummer after an hour to an hour and a half of building these things and really burning your brain on playing your cards or offerings.
Which is why I think it's safely labeled a semi-co-op game, because when that is the result, nobody wins. So my next favorite thing about the game is the hand management aspect. We have 8 different types of cards, and while all the cards are useful at some point in the game, it's really the decisions you're making every turn regarding, should I use this card as an offering? Should I use this card as the color that it is to get me more whatever? Or should I use it for its card abilities? So the 1s and the 2s in most of the numbers. Some of them give you an ability that you only use sometime, like moving the dragon or moving your piece or scoring extra on the obelisk chart. But then the other ones allow you to convert to other colors or count as other specific number of colors or whatever. Those are decisions that help just sort of drive the tactical aspect of the game of what should I do this turn to maximize the points I'm going to get. That's a really interesting mechanic.
I agree. That really does drives the game. I think the problem, you mentioned yourself, when you said that you'll only use some cards in rare situations, or that some cards just aren't that as valuable. So really, what I'm thinking of here are the dragon movement cards. These cards are fine when played for their colors, but their abilities are really lackluster compared to the browns, whites, and greens, which just make it easier for you to make those offerings you so desperately need. Moving the dragons is fine. I mean, if I have the cards, I'll play them sometimes for the purpose of moving the dragon, but you don't need to play them. Whereas the browns, whites, and greens, you'll need those in the course of the game. There's no getting around it. You will absolutely, if you don't have those, be hurting because you will not be able to make the offerings that you need to make on the spaces you need to make them. Grays play into that as well. Grays get you where you need to be. So I'm always happy to see a gray 1 in my hand. Not so with the dragon moving cards, and to some extent, the extra offering cards. These are really helpful in the very early game. After that, they kind of drop off, but you're always going to want those browns, whites, and greens. In addition, there's a little bit of a balance issue with, in the early to throughout really the whole mid game, getting cards as rewards. When you complete something and it gives you a card or even multiple cards, that fuels your next offering. And these things that give you cards also give you crystals and scales. Sure. So you're basically just making free progress. Because cards are so important, because cards are the lifeblood of your game, getting them as a reward for a building is just win-win more.
When they show up in the early, yeah, it can be.
Through mid, I'd say.
So we mentioned the cards themselves. I think my next big pro on this game is everything's of great quality. Everything's real durable. You get some nice detailed plastic miniatures, wood pieces. The tiles are nice and durable. And I really think the art is evocative on them, where you have blueprints or sketches, whatever you want to call it, on one side, and then a finished product on the other side. Yeah, quality components. This game is great.
I agree. The components are nice, but don't you think they're a little overproduced, Tom? I mean, do you really need these rubbery plastic dragons in this game?
Maybe not need.
I'm one of the few people that actually played Blue Moon. That's how far back I go. That's right. I'm an OG. And I played Blue Moon, and that also came with these damn dragons. It was a card game. These were just used to score a point. These were literally a point tracker, of which there are 3. You don't need them. I don't know why Cosmos keeps throwing these in here. They don't do anything. They look nice, but I mean, for the price, they're fine. But they make the box huge, and they're just too much. So it's a very clean game. Why do you have to have these elaborate components? The gameplay is good enough.
You're really mad about that.
Why, Dragon?
All right.
They're second only to the chariots in Tribune in terms of what the hellness.
Okay, so we've given our point-counterpoint review. What do you think about the game for real?
So, despite how emphatically I felt I needed to make my last point, I do enjoy the game. It's another Reiner Knizia game. His games are never complete misses. I don't love them all, but I don't hate any of them. And this one falls in that category as well. You know what? This one, I'm gonna give it a 7. I like it. The co-op mechanic is interesting. I really think it's very unique. It's very hard to describe. I agree with the inability to characterize it. It doesn't have a lot of luck, as we've defined it, but it has some kind of something else, a certain je ne sais quoi, that it's not quite luck, but winning or losing the game really does depend on what happens around you more than what you can do yourself. So because of the low level of control I feel in this game compared to his other games. Yep. We looked at Lost Cities. That's the opposite. The lack of control is going to put this one only at a 7 for me.
I actually have pretty much the same opinion because there's so little control and it's not luck as we've defined it. As I've said before, I like luck as we've defined it. I think that makes games fun and engaging and gives you those laugh moments. This doesn't have that. It does have the competition. But again, you can always not always, but often will end in a stalemate. It just doesn't really click together for me as a combat-driven game. It's a semi-co-op game, and it's too much in a bunch of general areas for me. I'm gonna give it a 6 out of 10. I would play it, and in the right group, it'll be really fun. But for my own home, no good. Yeah.
I like the delicate dance, but like I said, sometimes I feel like I just got beat by the other dancers without having much choice.
Sure.
But yeah, now I think it's time to break it down.
This is the breakdown of Reiner Knizia's Blue Moon City. The game plays in about 60 to 90 minutes. It's right in that middle ground of long and short, so we give it a 50-50 split. We give it 35 fast because the turns are relatively quick, but because you don't act on your opponent's turn and because maybe half the time your turns aren't directly affected by your opponent's, we give it 65 slow. We give Blue Moon City 30 luck because all cards are not equal, and we give it 70 skill because the game is won or lost on your ability to manage your cards and get involved in those big reward districts. We give it 35 strategy because getting the maximum reward for the minimal investment requires planning, but 65 tactics because maximizing your card hand is what drives your strategy. Because you can get sectioned off and forced to develop sections of the city alone, we give it 15 independence. Because maybe half of your offerings either affect or are directly affected by other players, and because you only score big points in tandem with other players, we give it 85 interaction. We give it 10 immersion because the evocative tiles are reminiscent of building city districts and it fits with the rebuilding city theme. Otherwise, it's an abstract positioning hand management game. We give it 80 simplicity because it's an easy to learn game, but you may have to reference what the symbols on each card do occasionally, and you may forget that the third card in each set doesn't have a special ability, so we give it 20 complexity. We give it 50-50 on portability and grandeur. It's an average size game in an average size box. We give it 95 completeness and only 5 expandability, because you could always add more cards or tiles, but you really don't need to. For our trophy scales, we give it 5 trophies in originality. On the surface, it might appear like it's a similar game to Alhambra, but it really is a unique game that defies genre categorization. For value, we give it 3 trophies. It's a moderately priced game, but it has excellent components. Mike gives it a 7 out of 10, Tom gives it a 6 out of 10, and that is the breakdown of Blue Moon City.